Hello and welcome to the Framework of Tomorrow. I am your host, Keegan Goldfarb, and today we will be talking about the amendments written in the Constitution. Today it will be the first 10 amendments in this episode, the original ones, and then next week I'll be talking about the rest of the 17. But before I get started today, if you are pursuing a higher education or want insight as life as a nurse, go check out Ashley Luann Kay at The Minnesota Nurse on Instagram. She was recently featured in the New York Times and is now currently doing a giveaway for a ProFlex scrub set. So go check her out at The Minnesota Nurse on Instagram. She is an amazing, amazing person and probably the coolest nurse in Minnesota. I'm gonna be honest. I might be a little biased, but yeah. So today, the reason I want to cover this topic is because I feel it's important. It's very important to educate everyone about these amendments, especially if you're listening and you live in America, which I'm sure you do. I think it's important that we all understand all 27 of the amendments. I'm sure you learned these way back in the day, but the amendments that are written in the Constitution they have a lot of like legal jargon in it, so it's kind of hard to understand it. So I'm basically going to break them down for you. Like I said, today I'm going to do the first 10, which were ratified in 1791, in case you're curious. The first 10, and then over the years since 1991, sorry, did I say sorry. Not 1991, 1791. I think that's what I said originally, and I just messed up. But yeah, since 1791, there have been 17 more. So there's 27 in all. And the most recent one that has been ratified has been in 1992. That's probably why I was getting it messed up, because the last one, the most recent one, was in 1992, and that's the 27th Amendment. It's crazy, because that was 28 years ago. That's 1992 does not seem that long ago, but that's 28 years ago, which is crazy. Anyway, so before I get into talking about the amendments, I kind of want to talk about how an amendment gets proposed, like how it gets added, because you're probably like, oh, I had no idea they all weren't written at the same time. I mean, maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't, but you're like, how does that actually happen? So how an amendment is proposed or changed, it's only happened once. I'll get to that. An amendment is proposed by either a 2/3 vote in Congress, so 2/3 of the Congress has to be in agreement about it, or a national convention of 2/3 of the states. So if 2/3 of the states comes together, all of the states in America, and they're like, yo, we need to either add this or change this, then it can be a conversation. But that's when it's only a conversation. And then for it to be ratified and for actually the thing to come into effect, you need 3/4 of Congress or 3/4 of the states to ratify the amendment. So you need 2/3 to get the idea out there of either Congress or the states, and then you need 3/4 of Congress or the states. So yeah, and only one amendment has been repealed in U.S. history, and that was the 18th Amendment, with the addition of the 21st Amendment to counteract the 18th. I'll explain that next week, but if you know, then that's really cool. But it's super interesting. And like I said, that's the only time we've had one of these amendments come through. So it's super, super difficult to change an amendment or to even add an amendment. But adding an amendment is probably a little easier, just like in the thought process of it, than changing one, because a lot of people get mad about changing amendments unless it's a super big problem, which it was in the case of the 18th Amendment. But like I said, I'll get to that next week. Maybe you'll have to tune in next week. Before we get to that, I'm going to talk about the first 10 amendments that we come. So starting off, first one, right off the bat, free speech. The First Amendment is about free speech. So let me read what the First Amendment says. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Yes, like I said, this is the first one right off the bat. It's hard to understand because of all the weird law jargon and stuff like that. But basically, the First Amendment lays out 5 basic freedoms: the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, the freedom of press, the freedom of assembly, and the freedom to petition the government. So that's 5. And it is considered to be probably the most important American amendment that we have in our Constitution, and probably the most American because we are all about freedom of speech and to freely give your opinion, and not to be persecuted or treated differently because of that. I mean, that doesn't always happen, but lawfully, because of the First Amendment, they can't do anything about that. As long as it's peacefully, like it says, it does say peacefully to assemble, because there are big groups of people that will come together in very violent ways. And in that case, it's not freedom. It's not, it can be persecuted because they're being violent. But if it's peacefully, then they have the right to protest the government. Second Amendment. This one, I wish it wasn't so early on in the episode, but it's because it's a lot of people, this has been the most controversial amendment. And here's why. Let me just explain. I'm sure you know what the Second Amendment is. It's the right to bear arms. So here's what the Second Amendment says. It says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Like I said, this is the most politically talked about amendment because a lot of people, they disagree with people being able to own guns, and because of all the shootings and stuff like that. But one more recent case of this, in 2008, the Supreme Court actually ruled 5-4 that U.S. citizens have the constitutional right to own a firearm and for the protection of their home. So this has been people have tried to reappeal this, and they're like, we don't want this to happen, but the Supreme Court ruled 5-4, and it's never been brought to states' attention that I know of. I could be wrong. For states to come together and kind of ask that question as well. But basically, it's the constitutional right to bear arms, to protect yourself. And one of the people on that Supreme Court, Justice Antonin Scalia, I really hope I said that right, who wrote the majority of this decision in 2008, laid out a number of provisions. They said, nothing in our opinion should be taken to cast doubt on long-standing prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill, or laws forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places such as schools and government buildings, or laws imposing conditions and qualifications on the commercial sales of arms. So basically, this person, one of the people who ruled in favor, is saying, they're like, we understand that we do not think that people who are felons, mentally ill, should be carrying guns, or that it is like you should be carrying a gun in schools and government buildings. They totally agree on that. It's just that Americans have the right to bear arms, so they can either hunt with it, or if you just really like collecting guns and you like shooting them in your backyard at targets, that's constitutional, and to have the gun in case of for self-protection, basically. So that's basically a Second Amendment. Like I said, a lot of people will come in together and disagree on this, and like, we don't need to have this happen. They'll use different arguments on like, hey, other countries don't have this. But the reason we have this is so that if we are ever attacked and our army fails us, the people can come together who have guns and can still fight against some sort of enemy power that could either be our actual government or an outside force. But that's just so Americans have the power and the right to own a firearm. So that's the Second Amendment. Whew, we're past the Second Amendment. We're good. Now for a lot of people don't know about, I feel like, any of the other amendments. At least I didn't know a lot about them. I knew about the Fifth Amendment, but now we're going to get into some where you're probably like, I didn't actually know that. So the Third Amendment. I'm going to read it. This is all it says. This is all it says. It says, no soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So basically, no soldier or any kind of military soldier can force a citizen to house them and feed them. The reason this was written into the Constitution, back in 1791. Why do I keep getting that wrong? The reason this was written in the Constitution was because in the Revolutionary War in 1765, there was something called the Quartering Act, which meant Americans were forced to house and feed the British military against their will. And the guys who wrote the Constitution were like, yo, we don't want that again. That's not fair. If someone doesn't want to house them, house like our military people, they shouldn't be forced to. But yeah, so that's the Third Amendment. Fourth Amendment is search and seizure of possession. So if you ever watch any like cop shows, a lot of people do. I personally enjoy the cop shows, and I never understood, why they couldn't just go into people's houses and be like, oh, we're searching for evidence and stuff like that. Well, it's because of the Fourth Amendment. So search and seizure of possession. So here, I'll read it for you. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall none be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So basically, you have to go before a judge. You have to have evidence or a probable reason to go and search this house or building or place or car, stuff like that. And one catch to this, though, if they find evidence on the property without a search warrant and then try to bring that evidence to the judge to get like a legal search warrant to keep going. So like if they snuck into a building or something and got evidence against them and they tried to use that evidence as to get like a legal search warrant so they could keep searching, it cannot be issued. You cannot use illegally obtained evidence in a search warrant, illegally obtained evidence to get a search warrant. So yeah, that's the Fourth Amendment. Super, super interesting. Halfway through here. Fifth Amendment here. This is the one that I knew about. I didn't realize it was the Fifth Amendment, but I guess it makes sense why they have to do this. So this is the rights of an accused person, where the saying, I pled the fifth, came from. So let me read it for you. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So basically, when you get arrested and they're like, you have the right to an attorney, right to an attorney, and anything you say will be and can be used against you. I'm butchering that. Basically, those are your rights. They can't just take your property without compensation for that. You will get a fair trial. You can't be brought to court for the same offense, the same offense twice, basically. So if you went and robbed a bank, went to jail, and then got out, and then someone tried to basically say that again, you're like, oh, you robbed a bank, but you already served the time. You just can't do that. And there's other cases too. That's a really just simple way of explaining that. So that's basically the Fifth Amendment. It's a set of rights for an individual accused of a crime. Sixth Amendment. This one is about having a speedy trial. So you might be wondering, you're like, a speedy trial? We don't have speedy trials. I know people who have been in court things for multiple months. Well, in the Constitution, there was never a set date, so I guess that could be considered a speedy trial. So let me read it. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by the law. I totally butchered that. Ascertained by the law. There it is. And to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witness against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. So, super wordy. I know they're probably boring the living daylights out of you by reading these, because, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of things that I don't quite understand what they're going on in these amendments, but breaking them down is much easier, and doing some research on them really helped. So basically, the Sixth Amendment is like the Fifth Amendment. It's a set of rights, but in this case, it's more inside of the court system. You will have a fair trial with witnesses, evidence against the person, and a right to the lawyer. And like I said, even though it says a speedy trial, it could be 1 to 2 years, if not longer. It's really just, the pace has to keep going in the trial. Okay, so Sixth Amendment. We got 3 more left. So Seventh Amendment. Or 4 more left, because it's 7, 8, 9, 10, yeah. Seventh Amendment. The right for a present jury in court. So this is kind of going along with 5 and 6 here. I'll read it for you. Seventh Amendment. In suits at common law, where the value and controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved. In no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. So all criminal cases that we have today has a jury in its court. And, well, it says in the Constitution that if the value of the controversy exceeds $20, then the right of a jury has to be there. But obviously $20 is nothing today. So Most of the time, they have a jury in a court. Eighth Amendment here. Fair punishment. So this one protects kind of the individual who's being accused. They can't have... I'll read it for you here. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Pretty basic. This is probably the shortest one I've read so far. This next one's pretty short too, which is good because I have a short attention span. I'm sure you do too. But basically, the Eighth Amendment, fair punishment. Basically, any unfair actions against a convicted criminal is unconstitutional. The reason this is basically like, if you think about it, like death penalty or being fined an excessive amount, like for bail, and like no cruel or unusual punishments inflicted. I'm just reading the end of it. It's a pretty straightforward, just no cruel use. And I guess that comes into question what people consider as cruel. And during the civil rights movement, and still to this day, the American Civil Liberties Union argues the death penalty is against the Eighth Amendment. But some states continue to do the death penalty. In fact, half still do it. 25 out of 50 states still allow the death penalty today. So I guess America's kind of divided in half against this. And some states are like, death penalty, perfectly fine. Other states are like, no, it's inhumane. I'll leave that up to what you think. The Ninth Amendment. Here we go. We got two more left here. Hope you're hanging in there. I hope you're finding this interesting too. I am finding this interesting. Although I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to history, obviously because I have a history podcast. All right, Ninth Amendment. Rights outside of the Constitution. I'll read it for you. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others restrained by the people. Be honest, I didn't understand like 3 of those words in that amendment. But basically, James Wilson, who was involved in the writing of the amendments here, was worried the government would say, since a certain right isn't in the Constitution, they could say it's not a person's right. But the Ninth Amendment clarifies this is not the case. So if I read through all 27 of these, in the next episode, 2 episodes here, including this one, and you're like, well, what about this? And I'm like, the Ninth Amendment basically covers that. It's just common sense on what the government can and cannot do, and yeah, that's the Ninth Amendment for you. 10th Amendment here. This one is interesting, and why, actually, during what we're going through with coronavirus, is why it's panning out to be this way. I'll read it for you quick. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, I can't say that word, or to the people. So basically, limited federal government. Any power that the government does not have is left to the individual states to deal with. So I think personally, this is personally why I find America's their, I guess, system of how we work so cool, is because we have this thing that we can basically govern by state. So if the government's like, okay, I really don't like this, but it's up to the states to decide, and then Wisconsin's like, yo, I think we should go this way on it, and then Minnesota's like, no, I think we should go this way on it. They can do that. I mean, obviously, it's pretty big things that are different, but in the case, I do have an example for this. In the case of coronavirus, the Wisconsin recently just basically went to the Supreme Court and sued them that the government in Wisconsin that governs the state of Wisconsin was overstepping their bounds with the coronavirus stay-at-home order and basically won, and now the stay-at-home order is gone in Wisconsin, whereas some states it's still in effect. And a lot of other states are doing this right now. And whether you disagree with it or not, I think it's really cool that if we disagree with a government, like our government, something like that, we can come together and our people group in certain states can basically be like, okay, we don't like this, let's get it changed. And I just think that's super cool. And if you don't like it in your state, I mean, I guess I could just say move. That's a little harsh, but yeah, basically, I think it's really cool that we have that choice. So that was the first 10 amendments. I hope you really enjoyed this. And next week, you should come back for the second part of this, and I will talk about the rest of the 17 amendments. Hopefully, I'll have time to do that because this one, just the first 10, I'll probably have to fly through them next episode. But these are like the foundational amendments. I mean, the other ones are really important too. But these are the original 10. Just wanted to get that out of the way. As always, I have a random history fact of the day at the end of my episodes. So the random history fact of the day today is kind of relates to, we're talking about America right now. So the 12th U.S. president, Zachary Taylor, actually overdosed on cherries. That's how he died. So after serving a mere 16 months in office, U.S. President Zachary Taylor passed away after eating far too many cherries and drinking milk at a 4th of July party in 1850. He died on July 9th from gastroenteritis. Gastroenteritis. Oh my gosh. I can never read things, but it's a hard word. The acidic cherries, along with the milk, is believed to have caused this. So watch out. Eating too many cherries. Don't eat so many cherries with milk, I guess, because you might die. It sounds horrible. But I guess that's what we can learn from good old 12th U.S. President Zachary Taylor. Anyway, yeah, so go check me out on Instagram at The Framework of Tomorrow on Instagram. And if you have any thoughts or questions, go and send me an email at theframeworkoftomorrow@gmail.com. And make sure to rate me with 5 stars on iTunes if you enjoyed it. Or, I guess you could rate me 4 or 3 or 2, or I guess you could do 1. But I would prefer 5. And if you do give me 5 stars, I will shout you out at the beginning of my episodes. So go to iTunes, go give me 5 stars and give me a little, I really thought this was cool, or something silly, I don't know, and I'll shout you out. But yes, I upload every Monday at 5 a.m. if you did not know. And yeah, so have a great rest of your day, and make sure, if you want to hear about the rest of the amendments, constitutional amendments, you'll have to check out part 2 next week, Monday at 5 a.m. when I talk about the rest of them. Have a fantastic rest of your day and your week. I am Keegan Goldfarb, and this was The Framework of Tomorrow.
Rally Podcasting Network. Your favorite podcast rallied into one place.